You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's McGuire Mondays. And you know what, Pierre? To be perfectly honest, I wanted it to be McGuire Saturdays. I was looking for a microphone after that Canada-US game. I just wanted to talk to... I was stopping people on the... No, I wasn't stopping people on the street because I was in a house. You know what I'm trying to say. I wanted to talk about Canada-USA, and I bet you were the same.
100%. I had an amazing hockey Saturday. It started off with Finland versus Sweden, which I watched on television. Then I went to a college game, Northeastern versus UMass Lowell, which was amazing theater. And then I got back to watch the matinee or the final game of Canada versus USA. It was a spectacular hockey Saturday. Never got old, and that game was one for the ages. It had everything you want in a game, maybe a little bit more than what some people wanted, but it was a tremendous drama for sure.
We'll break down the game in just a second, what USA did right, what Canada did wrong. But I wanted to look at the bigger picture and the executives in the NHL, the executives in the NHLPA. Man, there was a lot of handshaking saying, I think we found something after seeing how this tournament's gone so far.
So far, it's been great, and they deserve a lot of credit. And I think the people in Montreal deserve a lot of credit. I know people in Toronto probably don't want to hear that, but I think the fan base in Montreal, especially the Montrealers themselves, who braved a lot of bad weather over the first 2 or 3 days of the tournament to get to the games, deserve a lot of credit. I was doing my podcast from a bar in Montreal at McLean's Public House, and it was jammed to the gills every single show, just with people from all over the hockey world, but in particular, people that braved the weather just to come out. And Dan, just to build off your point, Bill Daly from the NHL came and sat with us on our stage and did a segment on the podcast, and they're thrilled. Obviously, the league's thrilled. I think the PA's thrilled, and the hockey community has to be over the moon in terms of the success of this event so far.
We were so used to All-Star games, no one trying. So many of us wondered if that All-Star game mentality would translate to this. And it kind of hit home for me Friday when Eric Lindros, the Big E, I was talking with him and I gave those sentiments to him. And I said, we were wondering. And he just looked at me and said, wait, you didn't think they were going to try? And that's when it hit home with me. I'm like, yeah, when you wear your country's jersey, all bets are off.
Well, that's fair. And Eric was part of a lot of big things. Eric was part of the Canada Cup. People forget that Eric was part of the Olympics. He's obviously been a captain of a team that went to a Stanley Cup final with Philadelphia when they lost to Detroit. So he's been around a lot of big events, Eric, and he's a Hall of Famer for a reason. But what I would tell you that I think has been really interesting about this event, it started out as everybody saying it's this amazing international hockey event. I respectfully disagree, and I thought about it a lot going into the tournament. It's an NHL event with international flavor. There's a big difference, because if this was an international event, we would not have had the shenanigans that we witnessed in the first 9 seconds of the game Saturday night. Because if you fight in international hockey, you're done for the game and potentially the next game as well. So this is a completely different type of a tournament. The league and the PA should be very, very proud of what they've built so far. I think it's got the potential to grow even more if eventually you add the Russians, the Germans, the Czechia, and obviously Slovakia. And if you could do that, you would have, I think, just a spectacular 2-week event over the course of an NHL season.
Okay, so let's break down that Canada-USA game. There's been a lot of finger pointing from the fans. Everyone's admitting, hey, we were entertained, but what about, and the one thing they're pointing to is in goal for Team Canada.
Well, you and I talked about it. I know I talked about it with Julie as well going into the tournament, even after they named the roster. The biggest concern I had was the puck moving on the back end and the goaltending. And so you compound that with the loss of Alex Pietrangelo. We didn't have Cale Makar on Saturday, one of the best puck movers in the history of the game. And obviously no Shea Theodore. So the puck moving component for Canada is difficult. That's number one. Number two, in goal, Jordan Binnington, the last game he played in an NHL situation was St. Louis versus Chicago. He didn't play particularly well over the course of the game, and you could see he was giving up bad goals. Where he was excellent, though, was in the shootout. and eventually his team won. They beat the Blackhawks. But he was leaky. I think you would agree on the Dylan Larkin goal. He was leaky, and that was obviously the game-winning goal. And I didn't like the goal he gave up to Jake Gensel. So the two goals that beat him are not the types of goals that can go in, Dan, if you're going to win in a major event like this.
Team Canada couldn't seem to get anything going. Was that Team Canada's fault, or was that just really good defense from the Americans?
I don't think the Americans are getting enough credit for how composed they've been on defense. They've been really good. And it's not just the defenseman either. I know Jacob Slavin's one of the best shutdown guys in the league. I think in this environment, Charlie McAvoy is really going to thrive, and we saw that with obviously the huge hit on Connor McDavid in the first period after McDavid singed him and beat him to the net on a beautiful backhand goal. But this American defense is really good. It's big, it's mobile, and the forwards have done an excellent job insulating them. I thought that was almost a textbook defensive game by Team USA on Saturday night. And if they continue that, they're going to be very, very difficult to beat.
Canada, how many passes in a row did they complete at one time? Maybe 3?
Yeah, so part of that is you see the brain power on the American bench. Whether it's Mike Sullivan, whether it's John Tortorella, or whether it's John Hines, they're surrounded with really intelligent hockey people. I'm talking about the players. They're surrounded by really intelligent hockey people on the bench. And you can see a lot of influence of Sullivan, and you can see a lot of influence of Hines, and you see a lot of influence on Tortorella, just how the team's playing defensively. So they've clearly come together. People forget this. Mike Sullivan was John Tortorella's assistant in Tampa, and he was his assistant in New York. And he also was his assistant at the World Championships in 2008. So there's a great relationship there. And Johnny Hines is a Boston University guy, and that's where Mike Sullivan went to school, and they're both New Englanders. So that coaching staff is really tight, and it's something that's not getting enough attention. There was no adjustment to messaging, which I think Canada's coaching staff has had to do, Dan. I really do, because they're all coming from different places. None of them have ever really worked together. It's a completely different environment.
You look at the scoring system in this tournament, 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points if you win in overtime, so on and so forth. 10 minutes of overtime, 3-on-3. Is this a testing ground? Are the NHL maybe looking at these things to bring into their league, or is this a one and done on these things?
No, I can tell you right now, the time of overtime is definitely something they're looking at. So if they can go from 5 to 10 minutes and it can be collectively bargained in with the Players Association, I would not be surprised to see that happen long term. In terms of the point system, I have a bit of a difficult time believing the league would do that. Because, Dan, what it would do is it would create massive separation between the haves and the have-nots. And so the have-nots would be basically eliminated from playoff contention maybe.
I call it the mirage. The NHL standings are a mirage because there's teams you're like, wait, they're only within 8 points of a playoff spot when you really look at like, no, they're garbage.
So you're spot on, and that's why I think the league would have a difficult time with that. They want to keep as many teams relevant for as long as possible for TV numbers and obviously ticket selling.
Yeah, I knew that one. We all want it. I just want a simplified point system when you don't feel like you're in a mathematics class looking at the NHL standings.
You know, every morning.
Although the extra 3 points would even cause even maybe more confusion.
But every morning, you know, Dan, ever since I was a little boy, I've always looked at the standings. It's like the first thing I used to do. When you actually get a real newspaper and you'd be able to open it up when you're having breakfast in the morning before you went to school, and I'd always look at the standings, and it was pretty amazing. You could see back then the league obviously wasn't as big. There weren't 32 teams or 16 teams at the time. But yeah, no, it's definitely different. It's definitely different.
Pierre, we're dating ourselves. But yeah, when the Peterborough Examiner would come to my house once a week with the full stats page, I would cut that out because that was my only time to see the full rosters of every NHL team, to see every goalie on the roster. That was the time of the week in which you got to see everything.
The coolest time I thought was when training camps would end, either in baseball, football, basketball, or hockey, and you look at the transactions in the newspaper. this player made it, this player didn't make it. And you would see where they were going for designation, whether they were going to the minors, whether they were just outright released. I thought that was fascinating when I was a kid growing up. And then I didn't think it was so fascinating when I was in there and it said, he's being released.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, back in the day, how many trades or dropping guys off teams did they just slip in there and no one even noticed because they didn't pick up that Thursday edition of the newspaper?
No, it's true. A lot of things have changed, and the internet's helped obviously change a lot of this. Just the ability to decipher information so quickly is amazing.
If Canada doesn't make it into this final against the USA, is it still going to be seen as a success story, this tournament?
Oh, the tournament itself will be seen as a success story, no question. I think in Canada there'll be a lot of questions about roster construction. I said it before, and I'm not trying to, pick on the roster construction. I was really surprised based on the fact that this is a National Hockey League tournament, not an international event. And that's something I think a lot of people forgot when they were building their roster. I was surprised Tommy Wilson wasn't on that team. I was surprised a player like Adam Lowry didn't get more attention. I was really surprised that a player like Mark Scheifele wasn't put on the team. And I was shocked, to be honest, that Christopher Tanev didn't get nearly enough attention to play for Canada as a shutdown guy. So there were like 4 or 5 players I was very surprised that were never really thoroughly in the discussion, publicly anyways. And I think if Canada were not to be successful in this event, there would be a lot of people that will Monday morning quarterback the selection of some of the players on the team.
Well, the Team Canada management, it's a great peak at a roster that they'll field for the Olympics because they'll see what worked, what didn't work.
No question. And that's one of the best parts of this exercise. And you're the voice of reason on that, Dan. That's a really well said statement. The truth is that this is a dress rehearsal for Milan and Cortina. That's what this is. And I've been, and the league knows, I've told them a million times I totally disagreed with them not going after 2014, and they can create any excuse that they want. There were a few owners that were very upset with the IIHF and the IOC and how ownerships were treated when they went to the Olympic Games, and that was a big part of it. I know they're not going to talk about that. I'm glad everybody's singing from the same songbook now, which is really good. I think it's great for the fans. I think it's great for the players that people will be going back to the Olympics. That truly is best on best, and I'm looking forward to that. But you're right, and I think it's really well said by you. The truth is this is a dress rehearsal for 2026.
That's right. I had to confirm because I was pretty sure we were having NHL players back in the Olympics, but I had to Google it and confirm to myself that, yes, the NHL and its players are back in the Olympics, and that's just 1 year away. Pierre, we appreciate you.
Oh, my gosh, Dan, great to visit with you. Have a great day. Stay safe and don't shovel too much.
No, I'm not going to have a great day because I got to shovel out the end of my GD driveway. Thanks for the reminder. Thanks, sir.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.